Hello and welcome to my interpersonal communication project presentation. My name is Kenneth Ankra, and within the next 10 minutes or so I'm going to be taking you through pretty much my journey in this class, HSCO 508. Next slide. So just to introduce the project real quick, the purpose of the project is to pretty much develop an interpersonal communication design that will address my interpersonal communication needs in order to continue to build healthy and meaningful relationships. Next slide. And in order to do that, I believe that we need to really focus on enlarging that conversation. Basically, when you're talking to somebody, how are you pretty much drawing this conversation and really growing it and making it healthy and interesting and fun. And I believe in order to do that, you need to focus on two things. One is really actively listening for understanding. And then the second thing that I would talk about is talking. So I believe that listening, both actively listening and talking, are the two things that plays together in this role for enlarging the conversation. And especially when you're listening, it's very important to really listen empathetically and really listen to connect. And I believe when we do listen and connect, we can then speak with meaning. And according to Peterson, when we speak, we're sharing pretty much our feelings. So from what we're hearing, when we're listening, we're essentially speaking it. We're essentially talking to our audience, whoever we're in that conversation with, and we're sharing what we're feeling. We're sharing our thoughts. But the one thing that Peterson mentions is we have to do this without accusing, without attacking, or really without judging or labeling anyone. So we just got to keep that in mind, and I'm bringing that really into my personal life, is that I really have to keep these things in mind when I'm enlarging that conversation. So the overarching goal pretty much here, I broke it down into two points. The first thing is just to really continue to build deep and meaningful relationships with friends and family by learning to listen empathetically. And I think I have a natural instinct to listen empathetically, but it's just really paying attention to it and really driving it home when I'm listening. And then the second part is, as a Christian, it's just my personal goal to continue to love others and just to continue to show people the love of Christ in my communication, so that they can see that there's a work that God is doing in me, and there's a work that I want to show and portray in my relationship. Because if you look at the life of Jesus Christ, he spent a lot of time really around people, and he listened a lot so that he can be resourceful and he could be loving. So I just really want to model my life after that. Next slide. So a little bit about my background. I was born in Ghana, West Africa. Just grew up in a small family, the youngest of two children. I grew up around my mom, sister, and grandmother before I was 13 and moved here to be with my dad. But essentially growing up with women in the house pretty much affected a lot of my behavior and the way I connected with people, and really the way I spoke with people. And so just in the next couple of slides, when we talk about my behavioral blend, it's just really interesting to see how my dynamics of growing up and my experiences just really shaped me to who I am today. And just to continue, I have a bachelor's in economics focused on international development at the University of Maryland, and now pursuing a master's degree in human services counseling at Liberty University. Next slide. So just to continue with background and behavioral blend, like I mentioned earlier, with my experiences growing up and being born in a family pretty much driven by women, And just to define behavioral blindness as it's a combination of background personality elements that influence one's natural relation to people. So I think that makes sense when I think about my background and how that really affected me related to people now. So I wasn't surprised when the results came out from Carbonell's DISC model, which essentially is a model to understand how we relate to people. And mine was along the lines of the IS, I being inspiring, influential, interactive, and really people-oriented, and S being steady, stable, shy, serving and submissive. So really a combination of both is where I tend to really strive as a person in my behavior. And of course, these behaviors have its benefits and also disadvantages, if you would, some of which the positives would be just listening without judging, listen empathetically, and then the negatives that I can see speaking my emotions. Sometimes when I listen, I may just jump right into speaking my emotions of accusing or judging people. And it's very important that I keep that in the back of my mind as I work towards these goals of my communication. And alongside my behavior blend comes potential barriers. So potential barriers that really gets in the way of my communication with people. And I've got a list here, but a couple that I want to mention is perception and viewpoint. I always see that my perception or viewpoint of the person I'm communicating with does affect my communication in general. So it's just really important for me to keep that in mind when I go into that communication, and just to think about ways to, practical ways to really break those barriers, which I will be talking about in the next couple of slides. Other barriers, I would say expectations, body language, also language and cultural barriers. In dealing with these barriers, I just pretty much took myself through somewhat of a psychological process, so just really allowing the self-reflection, which will then eventually help me just kind of recognize what this problem is, and then evaluate the problem, which would then lead to me finding a resolution for the problem. And in resolving the problem, there are a lot of practical tools that we received in this course, and one of which is Peterson's Talk a Listener card. I believe it's such a useful tool in interpersonal communication. So I just really want to focus on bringing that into my communication, bringing that into my relationships, and really work my way through it. Some more resolutions is just really speaking and verifying expectations in my communication, and more so long-term resolution would be more of just continuing to work on my empathy and genuineness and warmth. Peterson talks about that at the end of his book, and that being the key to him succeeding in the field that he's in. Next slide. Alongside barriers comes what we term the noise pollution. So I think noise pollution is sometimes easily ignored, if you would, because it's more so of a natural process. It happens, it's just what happens naturally to cloud your thoughts, to cloud your speaking, and some of which personally I know selective listening is one of which I struggle with. My emotions, so I mentioned earlier how much of an emotional person I am, so it's a lot easier for my emotions to kind of cloud my listening and cloud my speaking. And some solutions from Peterson's text that I want to reference from is just really being honest with the way I feel in process of listening and speaking. And there are others, like learning to deal with the biases that I may already have in my listening. Now with these barriers and noise pollution, I have to set goals to kind of push through them, and my communication goals and action plan is as follows. Goals, some of the goals that I've set is to continue to listen empathetically. I think I do an okay job listening empathetically and really connecting, but it's important for me to really start focusing on that and driving it home. So it's just to recognize and control my emotions in my communication relationship, to be concise in my talking. And then just the action plans going alongside with the goals is seek feedback in my communication relationship. And also just for scripture purposes, because I believe as Christians we're called to live by the scripture. And I know James 1:19 really talks about communication, and it says, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger." And it's important for me to keep that in my mind as I communicate with people, is that I need to be slow to speak. I need to really invest in my hearing, and I should really also control my anger or my emotions in that aspect. All right, so next slide. And just really to conclude this presentation, it's very important that I continue to think about improving my interpersonal communication as a lifelong goal. So it's not just a short-term goal, but just to really keep working as a lifelong goal, and just improving and prioritizing my listening skills, and just really incorporating the talker-listener card, and remembering that the conversation is the relationship. And if I'm all about people and I respect people and I love people, I need to really think about that conversation in that aspect, and that loving people and bringing the love of Christ to people will show through my conversations. So that would be it for conclusion, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this course, and thank you for listening. Bye.